It was supposed to be just another Tuesday night. The cameras were rolling, the studio lights gleamed, and millions of Americans tuned in, expecting the usual political theater. Heated debates, rehearsed comebacks, maybe a dramatic walkout. Just another evening of talking heads on national television. But what they got was something entirely different. What happened in that studio didn't just rattle the panel. It didn't just flood social media. It silenced America. Across from the show's polished host sat Captain Ibrahim Trow, a young, disciplined military leader from Burkina Faso. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He didn't show up for drama or controversy. He was there to talk about African independence and America's evolving role in West Africa. A diplomatic conversation, nothing more. Sitting opposite him was Caroline Leavitt, a sharp-tongued former political spokesperson known for her snark and unapologetic style. The producers had arranged a balanced discussion, no fireworks expected. But live TV never follows the script. For 20 minutes, Captain Trow spoke with quiet, measured clarity. His words were calm, thoughtful. There was no anger, no accusations, just facts. Laid out carefully with the patience of a man who has seen real war, real hunger, and real leadership. He talked about foreign aid and about regional sovereignty, about the resilience of his country. And then it happened. Caroline leaned forward, narrowed her eyes, and, maybe thinking she was making a viral moment, snapped the two words that would haunt her for the rest of her career. "Sit down, boy." The studio froze. You could feel the air leave the room. The host's mouth fell open in disbelief. Someone in the control room dropped their pen. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens, not sure they'd heard her right. Social media erupted within seconds. But it wasn't the insult itself that changed everything. It was what came next. Captain Trow didn't flinch. He didn't fight back. He didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He stood up, not in protest, not in rage, but in quiet, commanding dignity. He stepped to the front of the stage, his posture straight, his voice soft. "I come from a place," he began, "where boys are forced to become men before they even learn how to dream." The audience barely breathed. You could hear a pin drop. "You can call me boy on this stage," he continued, turning his gaze directly to Caroline, whose smirk was already starting to fade. "But where I come from, boys carry nations on their backs. They bury fathers. They lead armies. They survive not because they're fearless, but because they don't have the luxury of being afraid." You could feel the atmosphere shift. Caroline tried to roll her eyes, but she wasn't the center of the room anymore. Captain Trow was, and he hadn't even raised his voice once. He spoke of burying his father under an open sky. No ceremony, no camera crews, just grief and dirt. An older woman in the front row wiped tears from her face. The pain in Captain Trow's voice wasn't performative. It was real, and it landed like thunder. He turned to the audience, his voice low but filled with conviction. "When you say 'sit down, boy,' do you mean the boy who watched his village burn? The one who read by candlelight because electricity never came back after colonialism left? Or the boy who held his brother's body after a protest turned deadly?" Even the host looked choked up. A decorated veteran on the panel, Colonel Jacob Whitmore, placed his hand over his heart. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His eyes were filled with recognition. "You don't have to like me," Trow said, looking straight into the camera now. "But you will not erase me." The audience didn't clap. Not at first. They were too stunned. And then it started. One clap, then two. Then the entire studio was standing. Not out of pity, out of respect. Something real was happening, and everyone could feel it. Then Captain Trow reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded, worn piece of paper. A letter. "My brother wrote this," he said, 2 days before he died in a protest. He unfolded it carefully, his hands steady. He wrote, "Big brother, if I die, promise me they won't forget why." And right there, live on television, Trow held that promise up to the world. "I will not sit down," he said softly, "because I carry the memory of those who were forced to kneel." Caroline, once so smug and sharp, sat silent, her face pale, her hands trembling beneath the desk. But it wasn't over. Caroline tried to recover. "Oh, come on," she snapped. Are we seriously pretending he's some kind of saint now? The audience recoiled. Captain Trow didn't take the bait. It's not about sainthood, he replied, his voice calm. It's about humanity. Then a young black woman in the crowd stood up, her voice shaky but firm. No, she said. You don't need to apologize for being American. You need to apologize for being cruel. The silence returned. Heavy, charged. Caroline had no more cards to play. She was losing and she knew it. Captain Trow leaned forward. Disagreement is healthy, he said, but disrespect kills the conversation. And when you kill the conversation, you kill understanding. The applause that followed was different this time. It felt like a national exhale. And then came the moment that broke everyone. He gently held up that same letter from his brother and whispered, he was protesting for food. People cried openly. Even the production crew had stopped moving. No phones, no noise, just one man and a letter. The host tried to speak, but he had to stop. His voice cracked as he gathered himself. Captain Trow, he finally managed, is there anything you want to say to the American people watching right now? Trow looked into the camera. You don't need to know where Burkina Faso is to understand dignity, he said. You just need to know what it feels like to be invisible. He leaned in slightly, his voice steady. I've never asked for pity. I've asked for eyes. That's see? And then something completely unexpected happened. A camera operator put down his rig, walked onto the stage, and shook Trow's hand. Thank you, the man said, his voice picked up by a hot mic, for reminding me what honor looks like. The studio remained still as a middle-aged black woman in the third row stood up. I didn't come here to speak, she said, her voice cracking, but I need to. She looked at Captain Trow, her eyes full of grief. My son served in Afghanistan. He came back in a box, even in uniform. They called him Boy. The room was frozen. She wiped her eyes. When you spoke, it felt like my son stood up again. The host was wiping his own tears now. So were others in the audience. The power of the moment wasn't political. It was human. It was spiritual. Caroline tried one last time. This is a setup, she muttered. This is theater. The host turned to her, calmly removed his earpiece. Caroline, he said, you made this moment. You just didn't expect it to speak back. She stood abruptly, muttered something under her breath, and stormed off the set. Nobody clapped. Nobody booed. They just watched her leave. Captain Trow, still calm, still dignified, remained seated. I didn't come to shame her, he said. I came to tell the truth. Later that night, something remarkable happened. The little girl from the Chicago hospital, the one Captain Trow had mentioned earlier, appeared on screen. Hi, Captain, she beamed, holding up a paper flag she had drawn. You remembered me. The entire room softened. You said I was brave, she said, but tonight, you were the bravest. Captain Trow's eyes glistened. He placed his hand over his heart. You are the future I fight for, he told her. And then she added, next time someone says, sit down, boy, I'll tell them, stand up, like Captain Trow. The feed ended. The audience rose to their feet, not just to clap, but because they had witnessed history. That night, social media didn't just light up. It exploded. Hashtags were created. Students discussed it in classrooms. Veterans wrote open letters. Parents talked about it at the dinner table. Even celebrities from left to right posted one simple word: respect. A week later, Captain Trow received a letter from the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. It read, Dear Captain Trow, tonight, you didn't just speak for yourself. You spoke for every soul ever told to sit down. Boy, we are preparing a permanent exhibition titled Dignity Under Fire. We would be honored to feature your words and your story. Captain Trow folded the letter gently, his voice soft. Not for me, he whispered, for all of them. And then, something nobody expected. Caroline Leavitt returned to the same studio. No cameras, no press, just her and a letter. She asked the producer to give it to Captain Trow at his next public event, and when he did, Trow read it aloud. I said, "Sit down, boy," the letter began, and you stood, taller than I've ever seen a man stand. I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope your people and my daughter grow up in a world shaped by your strength, not my ignorance. Trow looked up from the letter, his voice steady. We don't heal through silence, he said. We heal through courage. And tonight, she showed some. From that day forward, even his harshest critics began calling him something else. The man who made America. Listen,